for the people I take care of. And I'm not perfect. I'm just doing my job.
Plugging away.
Plugging away. Exactly. That's exactly what I usually say.
Taryn, tell me about how you got into long-term care. And how many years ago?
28 at least, a little longer than that.
What's your story? Everybody has something unique.
Now, going way back, I probably got interested. My mother had a brain aneurysm rupture when she was 53, and I was in my late 20s at the time, and I knew very little about the medical world. I had never had any experience with that, and she was in the hospital for a long time, in rehab for a long time, ended up in a nursing home for the rest of her life, and I think I learned a lot from that initially. And then I eventually took a job as a CNA, and I had 3 small children at the time. They were young. My youngest wasn't even a year old yet, I think, or about a year old. And started working. It went pretty well, and I decided to do what they called med aids back then, were called CSMs. So I went and took the course to do that, started to do that, and one of the nurses that I worked with there, an RN, who then later on went into administration, she said, you know, you need to go to nursing school. You need to do this. And she kept telling me that, and I said, you know, I have 3 young children at home. I need the job. I need the money. I just can't. And she said, you know, the time's going to go by anyway. You just as well be doing this. And she literally picked me up one day and took me to it was Northeast Community College, she knew the director of the nursing program there, and took me to her office and said, she needs to go to school, you know? And that's literally how it kind of began. And then I started taking prerequisites, working full time, taking care of my kids, and the workplace where I was working at that time was very helpful to me. They gave me a scholarship, which helped provide mileage, and they worked with me so I could work the hours that I could work. They were very kind, very generous, and helped me a great deal. I've appreciated that to this day.
Sounds like you've had some amazing influences in your career path.
Very much so, yes. Yes, and I appreciate it.
Take me back to, like, who is an important mentor in the intangible side, the emotional intelligence that you have, and the way that you started to connect. Who is that comes to mind, and why?
A couple that pop into my mind right away. The director of nursing where I worked at the first place I worked at, Penny Walton, wonderful person.
What was great about Penny? What did she teach you? Kindness,
patience, common sense. That goes a long way. Carrie Davidson was the nurse that strongly encouraged me to go to school, even though it wasn't a great time in my life to do that, but I did it. One of my instructors, Jennifer Burtwhistle, she taught the first prerequisite college class that I took. It was A&P, Anatomy and Physiology. And I thought, well, I'll take one class, see how it goes. Because I was, like I said, I was not a typical college student. I was a little older. And I thought, if I can do this, we'll see. And on the first test that I took, she handed it back to me, said, class high score. And there were quite a few students in the class. And so I thought, maybe I can do this. And then I asked her to write a letter of recommendation for me later, because I was applying for, I think, some scholarships and some various things, and she was wonderful about doing that. And she said, she asked me what I was applying the scholarship for, and I said, well, I want to proceed to be a registered nurse. She said, you should go into med school. She said, you should be a physician. And I said, well, I have 3 children. I live in a small rural area. That's not going to be the most practical thing, but she really made me feel that I could do this, that this could be done. it was something that had never been on my radar screen before.
It sounds like your career path was challenging, but you were surrounded by a lot of support. Is there a time where, as your kids got older, they look back and they realized how amazing of a mom you were and how an amazing caregiver you were and how much you struggled to provide for them?
I hope as they get older, I hope they realize that. I probably at times wasn't there for them as much as I wish in hindsight I could have been, but I needed financially to do this as well as I wanted to do it. And I think they realized the struggle. My oldest daughter was probably in junior high by the time I was really getting into nursing school. And she helped me with some computer work and stuff that I probably wasn't as well versed in as she was, because she was in the generation then that grew up with it. I wasn't. So my kids were helpful. The other two were quite young at the time. But I hope they realized that I've always told them, I said, if I can do this, you can do anything. If I could do all this and still manage to keep everything going, you can do anything.
Taryn, I want to kind of move into some of your stories. Do you have any residential stories that just stick with you? Either the way that someone reacted or the way that you connected with somebody, or maybe you had a challenging relationship and at some point you were able to flip the relationship and that resident started to look at you differently. Anything that just comes out when I say that?
Oh, there's been a lot. There's a lot I've considered very good friends. That I miss terribly to this day that have gone on to their rewards. Sometimes I still dream about them at night. There was one in particular that gentleman in the first place that I worked at that we got to be very good friends, and he would talk about his life and things that he regretted, the things that he was glad he did, and he always called me Scary because one night I was getting him ready for bed, and he acted like he was asleep, and I said, Hank, are you ready to get ready for bed? And he went like this and scared me, and he genuinely did, and he thought that was so funny. He thought that was just hilarious, so he always called me Scary after that. And he, not too long after that, he became ill, ended up going to the hospital and passed away. But a while later, I dreamed that he came back and talked to me. And he said, I miss you, Scary. And I said, I miss you too, Hank. And it was like, what's it like in heaven, Hank? And he just I couldn't see him anymore. But it was a dream that I remember yet to this day.
Wow, that's beautiful.
He was a wonderful guy. And several other similar cases that people that I've just gotten very close to over the years.
I want to ask you about the characteristics of a great frontline caregiver. What comes to mind in terms of what's needed? Is it about listening? Is it about acts of service? And it doesn't have to be CNA. It could be in the kitchen. It could be in maintenance. What kind of mentality do you need to be great taking care of America's seniors?
I think patience. You have to have I think patience is important. Humor is absolutely necessary. You have to have a sense of humor. If you can make a resident smile or laugh, you can get a long ways. And sometimes just common sense, knowing when to step back and think about it a while, and just sometimes not talking too much. Sometimes you have to listen more than you talk.
If I asked you to name somebody inside of your organization, inside of your community that's great at the things you mentioned, the patience, the listening.
Mm-hmm.
Who comes to mind? Who's a shout out that you'd be like, this person is a great frontline caregiver, and our seniors are better because of this person?
I think we have quite a few people like that.
You don't have to name all of them. I'm not
Okay.
going to hold you to that.
I think our director of nursing is pretty new at the job. I think she is adapting and growing into it and doing okay, doing well. We have several staff nurses that I think are doing a great job, several CNAs. I hate to single out anyone because I think everybody's trying. And in this, staffing and everything is such an issue right now
Yeah,
that
burnout.
Yeah.
Taryn, have you come to the convention before?
No.
No?
Never have.
One of the things I find unique here, and I'm interested in your feedback because it's the first time for me, is about the community here at the convention, the community in LeadingAge. I just feel like there is an energy, an open arms. I met a whole bunch of people yesterday at the social hour, and I said, will you join me on the podcast today? And they did. And just hearing the stories, how's the community been for you your first time here?
Good. The presentations have been really good. I really enjoyed that. It's been wonderful. I would like to even see more. I'm going to see more today and tomorrow, but they're very good. I've learned a lot already.
One of the ones you mentioned right before we went live was about culture. What stood out in that specific workout, that breakout session that you thought made sense?
It was really interesting. He said he was actually working with architecture, like with building nursing homes and designing nursing homes, but to learn about this, he went to 5 different states and lived in a nursing home in several different areas to see what it was like. And I thought that was a great way to do it. And he had some real interesting ideas about what he found out. He found out that architecture really didn't have a whole lot to do with it. It was more the culture, the way people were treated, the way things were done, their physical surroundings were important, but not as much probably as trying to keep some normalcy in people's lives, not be so regimented. I thought that was interesting.
Well, Taryn, thank you so much for joining me on LTC Heroes. I know why you won the award. Anyone who's watching this knows that you're very humble, and we can feel it in your energy, and LeadingAge is a better place because of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.